Om Bhadram Karnebi Shrunuyama Deva Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraha
Sthirairangaistuštuvagam
Svastanubhihi Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vridhashravaha Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedaha Swasti nastarsho arishtanemihi Swasti no Brahaspatir dadhatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we make a start on the Upanishad itself today. And we'll read verse number 1.
Om Namaste Ganapataye.
Om Namaste Ganapataye.
Tvameva Pratyaksham Tattvamasi.
Tvameva Pratyaksham Tattvamasi.
Tvameva Kevalam Kartasi.
Tvameva Kevalam Kartasi.
Tvameva Kevalam Dhartasi.
Tvameva Kevalam Dhartasi.
Tvameva Kevalam Hartasi.
Tvameva Kevalam Hartasi.
Tvameva Sarvam Khalvidam Brahmasi.
Tvameva Sarvam Khalvidam Brahmasi.
Tvam Sakshadatmasi Nityam.
Tvam Sakshadatmasi Nityam.
Upanishad starts with Om, and just this one sound can be an Upanishad in itself. And later on, as we're going to be seeing, the form of Lord Ganesha is also equated to the sound of Om. And here in this verse itself, one aspect of Om is elaborated on when it says, Tvameva Kevalam Kartasi. You alone are the creator. Tvameva Kevalam Dhartasi. You alone are the sustainer. And then Tvameva Kevalam Hartasi. You alone are the destroyer. Within the sound of Om, it's broken up into the 3 syllables, A, U, and Ma. And creation, even in terms of just sound, usually the first sound, irregardless of what language the child is speaking, that a kid makes is ah. Because when you open your mouth, that's the first sound that will come out. A standing for creation, U for sustaining, and Ma for dissolution or destruction. And again, even in the formation of the mouth, when you come to the end bit and you're saying the mouth closes. And so even in the physical structure of speech, the sound gets created, held, and dissolves. The word Om represents all creation, sustenance, and dissolution. It's constantly happening in the microcosmic level. And so from each day, it starts, it plays out, it ends. It happens even smaller. Each thought starts, plays out, and if we don't pursue it, will fall away on its own. A thought only stays when we encourage it or when we follow through in that train of thinking. Even in our breath, it starts, we hold it, it falls. And so from such minute things, there's creation, sustenance, dissolving. And then it extends to become bigger and bigger and bigger. Our lifetime would be considered fairly big. But even bigger would be creations of planets. creations of solar systems. Those last for eons, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Even now when there's that Hubble spacecraft and they show these beautiful images of solar systems tucked away in as though like a womb waiting to be exploded. So at different degrees, it can be so small as my own thought and it can be so vast as universes. But the system or the rhythm or the cycle is, it rises, it comes into being, it plays, and it falls. Here, we can equate Om to Ganapati to this cycle. Om itself is the cycle in wherever we see it. But more importantly, when it comes into being, when it rises, whether it be my breath or the thought or the solar system, there has to be some source of energy allowing it to rise. When we look at our own breath, when we're very weak, when we're ill, it's so labored. When we're healthy, we don't even notice we're breathing. But if there's a cold or there's asthma, you can notice that even to breathe takes energy. Whatever force it is, whatever that allows that it to rise so that it can be created, it can come into existence, is Om. And then we tend to think of sustaining in the sense of looking after. Right? You build this home or this ashram and then you have to look after, make sure there's no cracks, make sure the plumbing works, make sure there's... But sustaining is the very energy that allows it to continue to exist. So even in the chanting of Om, if we run out of breath, or if we lose our voice, we don't have the stamina and the strength to sustain it. So again, an energy is also restricted because language doesn't have that much scope for me to be able to use another word. But the force or the strength or the empowering factor that allows creation to continue. And so if we think about it in terms of our whole lifespan, we come into being as these tiny, beautiful, cute babies. And then at each stage, something has to support for us to continue to exist in whatever stage it is that we are at. And so the sustaining is not a doing, but rather an empowering, the same thing that empowered it to come into being or manifest, allows it then to remain in that manifest form. And then dissolution. To destroy or to dissolve also takes immense strength. Now being popularized by the Buddhists where they make these mandalas, pretty much like how we do Rangoli. They do it extremely scientifically. And then the ritual is, after they do it, they destroy it. And sometimes that same day. So they've spent hours and hours and hours to create this intricate pattern. And then usually they'll call the Dalai Lama or the senior Lama, and then he just comes and puts his hand through it. And then each monk does. To show that nothing lasts. But to actually put your hand through it and destroy it takes strength. Takes a lot of strength, especially when I myself created it. Destroy somebody else's, not so hard maybe. But when I myself created it, how much, and that strength also will be the strength of dispassion, vairagya. that I labored so much, I poured myself into it, and then gone. And if you think about creation of this whole universe and each one of us, that same essence creates and then destroys. So whatever it is that empowers the action of destruction, Om. So it's a force that enables existence to be experienced. Existence would be there. But unless there is creation, we don't experience it. Even with us, if we're in a very dull tamasic state, we're not experiencing anything. And then a thought rises. We experience that thought. And if that thought is something inspiring, it uplifts us and it might even get us to do something or to feel like it's worthwhile, motivate us. So we can only experience this existence when it manifests. So Om is that existence which is already always there, but also comes into being in this particular form, experienced as this world. So that when we identify with our bodies, we can experience it. And so that gets, I'm going to jump from the different parts of the mantra, but we'll tie it all back together. So Om Namaste Ganapataye. Even Lord Ganesha, we can see it as a philosophical point of uniting, or we can see it as the form of Lord Ganesha. And more the Puranas and the scriptures say, the more and more our ability of our mind declines in the ability to have concentration, then we need a focal point. The more restless our minds, the more important it is that we have a focal point to concentrate on. And even from a very subtle point of view, Upanishad here explains that form comes from the formless. So you can give the example of the Big Bang, and I don't know the intricacies of the Big Bang theory, but basically in the beginning there's just space. Nothing quite exists. And then somehow there's this bang, and all form starts to exist. And then it evolves. But that's not the... Here we just need to know there was nothing, meaning no form. Something was there, but we can't identify it. And it only comes to be experienced by us or identified by us when a form comes into being. So from the formless, form comes. Upanishads too follow that same kind of logic. Brahman is described as infinite, beyond space, beyond time, beyond causation. And from this infinite Brahman, the world comes to be, the world that we experience. So from what the mind would define or describe as nothing, something's there. Brahman is something, but we don't understand it well enough to be able to recognize that whatever something it is, and so we say nothing's there. And then when creation takes place and we have a form, we can understand it, perceive it, and then acknowledge something's there. So from formless, form comes into being. And so we then use form to trace back to formless. Since we can't see the origin and we can only see the effect, we hold on to that to help us to then go backwards to get to the very, very source. Even again, in physics, they'll talk about if you remove the appearance can be any form, right? Whether it be the table, the cup, or me, then you'll get a layer of molecules. You remove that, not physically remove, but in terms of understanding, if you go deeper, you get a layer of atoms. Then you remove that layer and you'll go deeper and you'll go deeper and you'll peel off layer by layer until you get to just a mass of energy which doesn't have form. So even from a very physical point of view, if we understand it, it came from nothing because we don't know what it was that it came from, and then there was this bang, and then suddenly so many forms. And then now if we look at each form, and if you peel away to try and understand, you get to no form. So in our thinking, in our meditation, the same kind of thing. We don't know where these thoughts come from or where we came from. Physically, yes, we understand, but esoterically. But now that we hear and we're looking at the form, we work from the form to peel away. What am I other than this body? What am I other than these thoughts? What am I other than all my preconceived notions and beliefs? And so Ganapati can be seen as a form to help us eventually get to formless. But if our understanding is so mature and our minds are so pure, we can see it immediately as the essence, Tattvamasi. In Tattvamasi, you can split this word in two different ways. In the Mahavakya, and so there's three words, Tat, Tvam, Asi. Or this word in Sanskrit can be split in terms of just two words, Tattvam. Tattvam, is, for those of you who have studied Tattva Bodh, it means essence or thatness. So Ganesha is Tattvam, essence, Asi, is. Or Ganesha is the very essence of the Mahavakya, Tat Tvam Asi. Whichever way we break the Sanskrit, the essence of the meaning of it pretty much comes to the same thing. Because Mahavakya Tat Tvam Asi helps us to be able to go beyond my form and cosmic form. If you break it up, and I'm assuming here you'll have had exposure to the Mahavakyas. And in Tattva Bodh, it's done the most simplest, that if I look at myself, me minus body, minus mind, minus intellect, then what's left? Oh, vasanas, minus vasanas. Then what's left? Om. If we look at Pujya Gurudev's BMI chart, right? If you take away body, if you take away mind, if you take away intellect, if you take away vasanas, Om alone is left. So with me, if I minus all my limited body, mind, intellect, Om alone is left. If I take at the universe level, Ishvara principle, total mind, if I take away form from the world that I experience, and the subtle thinking that goes to create these wider world that I experience, the cosmic intellect and cosmic vasanas, again I'm left with Om. So if I take away form from myself and from the world that I am experiencing, I'm left with only Om. And that Om, I am. In Chandogya Upanishad, where the Tattvamasi Mahavakya appears, it's a very cute or beautiful narration from a father to his son to try and make his son understand this most subtlest of points. And it comes about 8 or 9 times, because each time the Guru, the father, uses an example And so one of the ones that is the easiest to understand is he tells the sun to put salt in water, in a cup of water, and then tells the sun to taste it from the top, the bottom, the left side, the right side, the middle, and each time he's asked, how does it taste? And the answer, of course, is salty. And then he says, just as salt, the taste of saltiness pervades the entire cup of water, even though you can't see the salt, in the same way, truth pervades this entire planet or world or creation, even though we can't see it, and that truth, you are. So the Tattvamasi, so an explanation gets given in each of the verses of the Chandogya Upanishad about how it's all pervading or how it's incredibly subtle, and then it's explained, and that truth, you are. And so when we take away all other names and forms, the essence that remains, that truth, we are. So Ganapati can be seen as the form or can be seen as that essence that exists even when all forms and conditions and gunas get taken away. That essence allows sustenance. That essence allows, creation, sustenance, and that essence allows dissolution. And so to that essence, namaste. Om namaste Ganapataye. To that essence, I bow down. And so if we think about creation, we can understand it far more if we look at ourselves. If we look at the solar systems and the planets and the universes, it just seems so vast. And yet each one of us live in our own world. In the Gita, there's Krishna says, Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. And when loka is used, world, the word loka is used, it's not necessarily that it's all the different heavens and all the different hells and all the different other planets. Loka is, we have so many tiny little different worlds within this one, even London. If you're driving along the different suburbs here in London, you can be in an area that is so incredibly Jewish, and the food and the talking and the culture and the dress. And then you drive 5 minutes away and you could be in an area that is so completely, I haven't driven around enough, Middle Eastern. And the people living in one area, they living here in London, but they speaking the language of somewhere in Europe or somewhere in Arab. And that's their food, and that's their relationships, and that's their problems, and that's their joys, and that's their little loka. They wake up thinking those thoughts, go to bed thinking those thoughts. And they might belong to wider London, but it doesn't really matter what's going on in wider London. It will matter what husband said to me in the morning. It will matter that I have to pay the bills, and if I can't, then I'm feeling so stressed. It will matter that my aspiration and desire, and I'm almost there. And so it's my loka, my little world. And how do we create these little worlds that we exist in? Completely through our thoughts. And so how does creation take place? If we can find where our thoughts come from. We find where and how creation takes place. While we're living our day, we might be able to see that because I saw this thing while I was driving, I had this thought. Or because somebody sent a text message and I looked at it, I had that particular thought. But where does our very first thought come from? Not when we were born, but just each day. Can we find the first thought we think when we wake up? homework. I didn't check if y'all did homework yesterday. Because if you did it, you would have enjoyed it. Even though I'm going to tell you the answer, because otherwise we're not going to be able to progress in the Upanishad, homework for you for the rest of the week. Usually the alarm rings and most people, if I ask, what is your first thought? Very often people will say, my first thought is, what's the time? But that's not our first thought. There's a thought much before that. A thought before we even stretch, or a thought before we even open our eyes. And most likely we're not able to find it. Because we don't exist until that thought does. And so what we're trying to find is what exists before I do. Within my own mind when I wake up in the morning. And it's the moment to contemplate on, because even if you've been exposed to Upanishads, you'll understand it's when we wake up, that very exact moment is where you almost as though bridging two avastas. Avastas are the dimensions of existence or realms of consciousness of waking, dream, and sleep. And usually we see them as very distinct. I'm awake, I'm asleep. And usually they are that distinct. Except for this very fraction of a moment in time when I'm just waking up or I'm just falling asleep. And they're so incredibly hard to catch those moments. Because in that transitioning, the I is not as strong. Ramana Maharishi explains this concept of who wakes up first very, very elaborately. In Atharvasirsa he talks about aham vritti and idam vritti. Thoughts of that, meaning objects, and thoughts of me or I. And he explains that underneath every thought of an object, there is a thought of I. Every idam vritti will have an aham vritti. And so this aham vritti, this thought of I, underlines every other thought we have. We may not notice it because we get so focused on the object. So if I have the thought, I am cold, I'm so focused on cold, I may not notice I am. And even if I think carpet is red, maroon, I'm so focused on the color or the texture or the object carpet, I don't necessarily think I am noticing that the color is. But the more we introspect and the more alert we are, the more we do notice. I think, I feel, I know, I want, I understand, I don't understand. I care, I don't care. The I features so much. And this creation of the I thought, because it's not a solid, tangible, ready thought. Every time we think the I thought, it's getting recreated. And that's why early in the morning when it's just getting created, I don't notice it because it's not completely there yet. Only when it solidifies to become I. I notice it. This I thought starts our day, starts our world. So Om Namaste Ganapataye, this bowing down. Ramana Maharishi was a man of very few words. And there's a beautiful incident where somebody goes to him and said, Bhagwan, where are your feet? I want to bow down to them. And you might think this is a peculiar question, where are your feet? But you'll be surprised how often people ask this. And I'm always thinking, where can they be? So when he asked Bhagwan, where are your feet? Ramana Maharishi said, first, do you know what is feet? And do you know what is head? And he went on to explain. Head is that in which this I thought arises. And it is this very I thought which is ahankar. Because the minute it arises and it gets defined and it takes a shape, whatever shape the I thought takes is the boundary that I create for who I am. So ahankar is the limitations that gets created for me. I define myself as per that limitation. I am only this body. I am only this intelligent. I am only this flexible. I am only this patient. It becomes the barrier. Upadhis means boundaries. It becomes the upadhis by which I then get locked into being this limited entity. Ahankar means I have limited myself. The definition of that I thought will have a boundary. Even if I think I'm very smart, smarter than Einstein, I still put a limitation on how smart I am. This ahankar that gets created and recreated with every I thought is head. And head bows down to Guru's feet. And Guru's feet represents that which he stands for, that which he embodies. And we can say it in so many different ways. Knowledge, love, the scriptures, the teachings. But if we go back to Tattvamasi, take away body, mind, intellect from me and it's left with Om. That Om which we can say is consciousness itself, Sat itself. And so Guru's feet, when you go back in terms and you understand, it's the knowledge he stands for, or the knowledge he has is, he is consciousness. And so the feet are consciousness. Head is ahankar, surrendering to, bowing down to consciousness. And where did that ahankar even come from? Where did that I thought even arise from? I only become aware of it once it's solidified as an I thought, but it had to have come from somewhere, even before it took the formation. While it's taking the formation, I may not be able to hold it and recognize it as an I thought, but something has to be there even before it starts taking that formation. The I thought comes from consciousness alone. And so the bowing down of that I thought ahankar into consciousness is merging it back into its source. It got created, it's been sustained, but no need. I dissolve it back to its source. And coming back to Om. that which gives me the power to be able to destroy and dissolve into back the very source of where it came from. So Om Namaste Ganapataye, that namaste is that bowing down of the I thought, the ahankar, and it's actually the only thing that we own. So, in puja we may offer the flowers and the agarbatti, but we don't own it. We give donations and in charity, but that money came through so many different factors, including grace. The only thing that I can completely say I made is this thought of who I am. It's my only creation. And that's why it's so beautiful that after that mandala gets created, dissolve it. Om Namaste Ganapataye, and I'm dissolving it to Tattvam Asi, the essence of what is in Tattvam Asi, dissolving it back into consciousness. And it is that consciousness alone, Tvameva Kevalam Kartasi, that all creation comes out of. That consciousness alone, that Tvameva Kevalam Dartasi, that creation gets sustained. Whether it was a good creation or not, it gets sustained by the very force of that consciousness that allows that thought to remain in our head, or allows that form to remain as a form. Tvameva Kevalam Hartasi, that consciousness that allows whatever that got created to be dissolved back into its source. Tvameva Sarvam Kalvidam Brahmasi. All of this that we see playing as sustenance creation, all of it is nothing but that same consciousness, that same truth. And you alone are that truth. Tvam Sakshat Atma Si Nityam. And we give it different names. We call it consciousness, or we call it Brahman, or we call it here Atma, which is described as always eternal. But the beautiful thing about calling it Atma is it's me. Sometimes when we say it's Brahman, it still feels far away. Or when we say it's consciousness, sometimes it still gets thought of as theoretical, right? It's a big word. But when we say, or when Upanishad says Atma, Atma is me, my essence. And so all that is being said as Om, as Ganesha, as the essence of Tattvamasi is me, my self, my essence. And then it's Ritam Vachmi.
Ritam Vachmi, Satyam Vachmi.
Satyam Vachmi.
When we hear this all explained so beautifully, even though it makes perfect logical sense to us, and even though we have the faith and we believe the Upanishads as it says, the truth of this is Ritam. Ritam Vachmi is, I speak the truth, but when I experiencing the I thought and experiencing the world to be real, says I am Brahman, I am Atma, I am Tattvamasi's essence, it's a theoretical saying so. It's a saying so based on the fact that scriptures say it, so it's true. Not necessarily I've understood it, I've experienced it, and it's true. But scriptures have said it, and so it's definitely true. And then from that understanding it to be true because scriptures say it, because Guru says it, we go to Satyam Vachmi. When I say I speak the truth, the way the Guru says it, because the Guru has been able to totally surrender that I thought to consciousness. And therefore there's no more the limitation or the boundary that gets created by the ahankar. And so they're experiencing infinite, experiencing eternal. And when they're experiencing eternal and infinite and they're saying this is truth, it's Satyam Vachmi. It's true because it's their own reality. It's their own truth. When we speak about it from books, it's true. It's still the truth. Because truth can't be changed, and truth is not a subjective thing. It is what it is. But it's not my truth, because I've not yet experienced it. And so this division comes from, I know it's true, the Upanishads have said it, I believe the words of my Guru when Guru explains it. But there's this disparity, because when I walk out of the class and I get into the car, the world suddenly becomes very real. And all the stresses and the strains of the world appear to be far more real than that bliss that we felt when listening to the words of Upanishads. And that disparity is Maya. And we bridge it by being able to contemplate more and more on these words and meditate and be able to find the truth of it within our hearts. And that journey can be described as the journey from going to seeing the one in the many, which we've heard also, especially when you get exposed to Gita verses. And when we think of the one in the many, then we see all of us as separate entities, many, but we understand that there's that same essence or that same life force, that same truth within each one of us. And in a very kid-like way, it gets depicted as, this little flame in each person's heart, or a little Krishna in each person's heart. And so there are many, but there is this oneness, or there's this small aspect of each one of us that's the same. So we see a small bit of sameness, but the bigger bit is still the diversity and the many. And the journey is to go from that to seeing the one as the many. It's just that one truth that becomes all the differences that we see. When we see the one as the many, we don't see the differences. When we see the one in the many, we still see the differences. The differences still feel very real to us. In Brihadanyaka Upanishad, there's this one section where they talk about the world as truth, because that same truth alone became this world. So creation had to come from consciousness. And if it came from consciousness, it still has the quality and the caliber and the texture, or whatever it is that we want to use, of consciousness. So if it got created out of truth, out of Brahman, then that same Brahman became everything. And so then when we look at this world, it's actually still Brahman. Just like if you use cotton to make a sari, then the sari is still cotton. And so if this whole world got made out of truth, then the world is still truth. And so creation or world gets used as truth. And then to refer to Brahman, or the essence, the word used is the truth of truth. And this can be just playing with words, and I don't want to do that, and I don't want to deviate from the point. But something different. It's still that original ingredient. In this case, truth. And if I can start to see it for the ingredients that it's made out of, Even to do this much is contemplation. Even at the level of, if I can see my body to be made up of the ingredients it's made up of. And just even for a fraction of a moment, if I can see body and not think me, because that thought of me is so immediate when I look at body. But if I can look at body and think, earth, water, fire, air, space. And just be able to see it as just that. If I can look at my mind and not see it as me, feeling all these different things, but be able to look at my mind and think of it as just thoughts. Irregardless of which thought is there right now in my mind, it's just a thought. How very differently we will see body and mind if we could see it for just the ingredients it's made out of. And then, of course, where did thoughts come from? Consciousness. Where did space, air, fire, water, earth come from? Consciousness. And so next step would be able to see body and say, consciousness. To be able to look at my own mind and know thoughts, and thoughts can only exist in consciousness. To make that journey then helps me when I look out into the world. I'm not seeing the differences as much. I'm seeing the same ingredients that made my body makes each body. I'm not seeing the one in the many. I'm seeing the one as the many. Because they're the same ingredients. And whatever the ingredients are, or the proportions and the differences in the ingredients are, the ingredients also just came from consciousness. And through the contemplation in this way, Ritam Vachmi slowly becomes Satyam Vachi. I stop, even though I may continue when I teach and speak to others in the world, I say, scriptures say. But in my heart, it's, it is. Scriptures say there's only one truth. But when I close my eyes to meditate, there's only one truth. Scriptures say, I am that truth. But finally, even without closing my eyes, I know I have to be that truth. Because nothing else exists. There is only that one truth. And that journey is the entire spiritual journey, is the entire Upanishadic journey. And to make that journey, so many things have to be conducive. Right? Even for you to be able to make it physically here to today's class, not watch it on the computer at home. So many things have to be conducive. Health has to be conducive. The people you're living with have to be supportive. The timing of work has to be just right. Your ability to be able to get to wherever you need to afterwards. So many things have to be conducive. And so that prayer that each seeker makes, that may all those things fall into place so that I can make this journey and be able to revel in the truth that I am. And so the next verse asks for protection from so many different aspects.
Avatvam mam
Avatvam mam
avavaktaram
avavaktaram
avashrotaram
avashrotaram
avadataram
avadhataram,
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 avanuchanamavashishyam,
avanuchanam avashishyam,
avapashchattat,
avapaschattat,
avapurastat,
avapurastat,
avottarattat,
avotaratat,
avadakshinatat,
avadakshinatat,
avachordhvatat,
avachodhvatat,
avadharatat,
avadharatat,
sarvato mam pahi pahi samantat.
sarvato mam pahi pahi samantat.
And so the prayer from the student for protection. And even though these are very, very beautiful and these can be elaborated on extensively, I don't want to dilute the subtlety of Upanishad by going into sadhana point just here. So we'll see it briefly. Avatva is, please protect me. Avavaktaram, protect the speaker. Now the speaker can be right now, whoever's, in this case me, speaking, so that they speak the truth, or so that they speak with conviction and understanding. Or it can be seen in from the everyday point of view, every time I speak, protect me, so that my speaking is pure and auspicious, like the prayer Badram Karne that we saw yesterday. Ava Shrotraram, protect the listener. So again, if we go for a classroom setting, while I am teaching right now and you are listening, protect you from any misunderstandings that I may have. Protect you that you can stay awake and alert and attentive to the words that are spoken and be able to make sense of them. Avadhataram, protect the donors. So in a setting like this, people would have given in charity so that we can have this facilities and that this kind of teachings continue. So whoever contributed for me to be able to sit here today, protect them. Again, everything can be taken from a more subjective point of view. When I give, protect me, that my giving be selfless, heartfelt, doesn't get mixed up with pride and arrogance. Protect the supporters. So people give financially and people give in terms of time, in terms of effort. Over the weekend when we had all the different camps for the kids, so many people come. Whether it be to actually help with the kids or whether it be cleaning up here, there and everywhere or beforehand to prepare the material. So whoever has supported in whatever way, not that it's a financial contribution. Whoever has supported, may they be protected. And then it goes on to say from all the different directions. It's not that they don't have significance. It's just that I'm not going to go into the significance because then it will bring whatever we said down a notch a little bit. The different directions, south is representative of death. It's talking about the past. It's talking about the future. Basically meaning that from all aspects in our lives, may we be protected from anywhere where there can be any sort of distraction, not danger here. Because there's no danger, I am truth. How can there be danger? But I can be distracted from pursuing my journey to abide in that truth. So may I not get distracted in any which way, from any which direction, from the front, from the back, and the Digbandaha. Even in Puja Vidhi we tie it up. So today it would be a little bit like, because I want to sit and meditate, I switch off the phone, I turn off all the gadgets, the TVs, and then make myself comfortable in my seat. So here too, when we're saying protected from all the directions, whatever I know would distract me, may I be able to stay focused. May they not have entry into my awareness. Sarvato mam pahi pahi samantat. It's just this most sincerest prayer of, please help me. When we pursuing our contemplation, when we pursuing our meditation, if the mode of mind is sattvic, we will be able to dwell on this higher philosophy of the Upanishads. But the minute a little bit of rajas or tamas comes in, the mind gets dissipated. And so if a student is experiencing this wonderful bliss and then the mind gets restless again, this is just a natural prayer. Even though Upanishadically I understand I am that truth, but when the mind is not cooperative for me to be able to see it and feel it and believe it, then once again that duality creeps in, and at least there's that sense of devotion and surrender to hold on to the symbol of truth to help me come back to that completely sattvic state of mind. So we'll end again with a very short meditation. I'm sitting very nice and straight, and if possible, can I take 2 minutes more? Is that okay with everyone? Just 2 minutes more. Gently closing your eyes and taking a few deep breaths in. And in this short moment that we're spending, we too can start with a sincere prayer of please protect us so that this knowledge doesn't stay theoretical, nor does this knowledge make us proud. But this understanding that we have may truly bridge the gap between theory and practice. And just as you watch your breath, notice creation, sustenance, dissolving. And I'll be quiet for the next moment or two. But if any thought should come into your mind, other than you're noticing your breath, when the thought appears, see it as being created. Know that it will be sustained for as long as you sustain it. And then watch it dissolve if you no longer sustain it. Avoid the temptation of noticing the details of the thought. Try to the best of your ability that when a thought rises, you see it as just a thought. And when there's no thought, continue observing your breath, noticing creation, sustenance, dissolution. Purnamudapachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti
Shanti.
Shanti Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Today's homework is to look for the ingredients in everything you see. And tomorrow morning when you